The Reapers. Enigmatic machine intelligences housed in enormous legged warships responsible for cyclical extinction-level events that have plagued the galaxy and its most advanced and sophisticated species for ages beyond memory. Culling the preeminent species from the galaxy and then leaving without a trace to allow lesser species to advance and grow to achieve their own apex, only to return 50,000 years later to begin the cycle anew. These are entities that are seemingly beyond comprehension, cannot be reasoned or bartered with, and fulfill their prime directive irrespective of any amount of force or resistance they encounter. But for such tremendously powerful entities, we know very little about them and their functions, but much that can be deduced from observations of their actions and response to various circumstances and parameters, which may grant us an insight into the specifics of this implacable foe. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and today we begin the immense journey of knowledge in an attempt to arrive at an understanding of the Reapers, by taking detailed looks at various systems, behaviours and characteristics of Mass Effect's primary enemy. To begin this, we will look at the single most resilient aspect of their physical bodies, their kinetic barriers. If you are new to the Mass Effect universe, I suggest you pause this video and watch the videos linked in the description on Element 0, Mass Relays, and the Reapers, to get an overarching understanding of some of the specifics of the Mass Effect universe before continuing with this video. This video will go in depth and focus on the Reaper's kinetic barriers and cover extensive calculations based on known and accurately estimated parameters to inform our ultimate conclusions. Reapers have extremely powerful energy shields called kinetic barriers. These are repulsive Mass Effect fields projected from tiny emitters. These shields safely deflect objects travelling at rapid velocities. This affords protection from bullets and other dangerous projectiles for as long as the barriers remain charged. Each deflected projectile drains a proportional amount of energy from the barrier due to the conservation of energy and momentum, but is modulated by the strength of the Mass Effect field, or in this case, the apparent mass of the target, along with the nature of the impact, in this case assumed to be partially elastic. Reaper shields have been witnessed at being able to shrug off an entire fleet's worth of firepower. This is likely owed to the fact that Reaper shields are powered by enormous ESO cores, meaning in spite of taking immense firepower, the barriers are being constantly replenished. Bear in mind that biotic barriers are similar to kinetic barriers but can bolster kinetic barriers still further, and these are again based on Mass Effect technology that the Reapers have mastered. So in all likelihood their already immensely resilient kinetic barriers are also effectively given a capital ship-sized Mass Effect equivalent of an overshield. In an effort to arrive at an ultimate conclusion on the strength of these kinetic barriers, at least as far as we can tell, we must first look to known parameters. From this we must look at a lot of the cutscenes from the Mass Effect trilogy to ascertain those specifics. In this particular cutscene, the Reapers have amassed in Earth's orbit as the combined fleets of Citadel space arrive on Earth's doorstep to fight the Reapers. In this scene, we can see one specific Reaper, a capital ship Reaper, that took 4 main gun shots from a cruiser-class ship. These shots are 20 kilogram slugs fired at 1.3% the speed of light, or around 4,025 kilometers per second, which means that each slug impacts with the force of 38 kilotons of TNT, approximately the same as the nuclear device dropped on Hiroshima, which means in this particular cutscene this Reaper took 152 kilotons worth of energy, which is fairly impressive for a ship. But there is a better example. In Mass Effect 1, Sovereign arrives at the Citadel and simply rolls through the Turian defense fleet that is guarding the Citadel. We can see as Sovereign approaches 3 impacts, indicating that Sovereign took 3 shots from main guns from those cruisers, but then also collided directly with a Turian cruiser and continued completely unaffected. In order to understand the levels of kinetic energy that are at work here, we need to first find the mass of a Turian cruiser and Sovereign to calculate the kinetic energy of the collision. A Turian cruiser is quoted at being 500 meters in length. We can use its known length as a measuring stick to calculate its height and its width, resulting in measurements of a Turian cruiser being 500 meters in length, 335 meters in width, and 165 meters in height, giving us a volume of 27,637,500 meters cubed. However, since the ship is a delta-like configuration, it doesn't occupy the entirety of the space of a similarly sized cuboid, which is what ultimately that volume that I've just given will have calculated. So this is a massive overestimation. Luckily, over on the Space Battles forum, a user by the name of RandomGuy96 took the in-game models of the different ships from Mass Effect, scaled them appropriately, and then found their internal volumes. From these, we can find the volume of a Turian cruiser is 1,368,260 cubic meters. Now, with that we can calculate the ship's mass. Ships' masses in Mass Effect tend to be accepted at between 200 and 400 kilograms per cubic meter, based off of numerous calculations across the community relating to the known mass and volumes of very specific ships, and then extrapolating these figures to the appropriate vessels. Unarmoured or support vessels tend to range in the 200 to 300 kilogram per cubic meter range, while warships are assumed to be between 300 and 400 kilograms per cubic meter. So, for a cruiser, given its role in battle, we'll assume a mass of around 350 kilograms per cubic meter, giving a Turian cruiser the mass of 478,891 tons. Sovereign is a Reaper capital ship, measuring over 2 kilometers in length. Again, using RandomGuy96's same calculations for volume, we find that the Reaper of this size has a volume of 40,826,000 cubic meters. It's reasonable to expect that a Reaper has a significantly higher density than normal ships, given their advanced technology, armour, and likely fewer habitable areas for life forms inside of them. However, for this purpose, we'll assume the same density we used for the cruiser, which means that Sovereign has a mass of 14,289,100 tons, making Sovereign as massive as nearly 30 Turian cruisers. Now we know this, we need to calculate the speed of the impact. In this specific shot, the Turian cruiser is basically at a standstill, so that only really leaves Sovereign's velocity to be calculated. And luckily, the very next clip we get a great above shot of Sovereign cruising through the debris field of the Turian cruiser, which we can very easily use to calculate the velocity by using Sovereign's own length as a measuring stick over time. During this scene, Sovereign moves an entire length of 2,000 meters in 3.4 seconds, giving a velocity of 588 meters per second. Now we have all the relevant data, we can plug that into a conservation of momentum calculator to find the kinetic energy of this impact. The impact itself is a partially elastic collision, which is best used to describe impacts of this nature. The Turian cruiser is at a standstill, and Sovereign's velocity doesn't visibly change after the impact. All of this is important information for the calculation. Putting all of this data into the calculator gives the kinetic energy of the impact between Sovereign and the Turian cruiser of 2,470,185.3 gigajoules, or 590.3 kilotons of TNT, meaning at the very least, in this scene, Sovereign took 3 20-kilogram mass accelerator slugs at 38 kilotons apiece, totaling 114 kilotons, plus a collision of 590.3 kilotons, for a total of 704.3 kilotons, and it didn't even slow Sovereign down. But there's a better example than this. Following this, we get a shot of Sovereign mounted on the Citadel's spire, as it's assaulted from all sides by Alliance vessels. The shots impacting Sovereign at this point aren't of the same energy as the ones Sovereign took earlier. The blooms of fire, so to speak, on the surface are markedly smaller than the ones that Sovereign took approaching the Citadel, leading me to believe that all of the ships here currently assaulting Sovereign are not using their main guns, likely to reduce the risks of collateral damage to the Citadel should they miss. But for this reason, I believe the shots peppering Sovereign's hull right now are the broadside guns, which are also mass accelerators but at a much lower velocity owing to their smaller size. The main guns are 90% the length of the ship. The cruisers here are almost all Dresden-class cruisers. Their main guns are dual 480-meter mass accelerator railguns. This means the main guns accelerate a slug from 0 to 4,025 kilometers per second over a 480-meter distance, which gives an acceleration of 16,875,651 kilometers per second squared. The broadside guns are 45 meters, and we must also unfortunately make the assumption that they're firing the same caliber of round, the 20 kilogram slugs, because I'm afraid we just don't know otherwise. And I would even go so far as to argue that it would make sense for them to fire the same rounds, because if the magnetic accelerator guns can accelerate around to higher velocities depending on their length, it makes sense to standardize the round across all of the guns, but then vary the power of those respective guns simply by the length of their barrels. With the known length of the broadside guns being 45 meters, and assuming that they fire the same caliber of round, we can use the same calculations we use to calculate the acceleration of the main guns to ascertain and double check the velocity of the broadside guns. Unfortunately, this will be a rough estimation because we had to assume many of the key variables remain the same, such as the slugs being the same size and assuming the same acceleration curve. But with this, we can estimate that the broadside guns fire the same slugs at 1,232.4 kilometers per second, giving them an impact energy of 3.6 kilotons of TNT. Now we have to go through the rather arduous process of estimating the number of impacts Sovereign is taking during this clip, and thus extrapolate how much energy the kinetic barriers are shrugging off. Going frame by frame, I counted 102 impacts from ordnance I'd consider to be broadside guns. We can also only see the front side of Sovereign here, so assuming it's being attacked from all angles with the similar quantity of strikes, this can be doubled to around 204 impacts. But I'm also going to remove 10% of that to account for possible discrepancies or variance in attack for the avoidance of doubt, which drops this to around 184 shots landed in a 7-second period with no obvious time for kinetic barrier to recharge. Now it's a simple process of multiplying the impact energy by the quantity of impacts. This already equates to 662.4 kilotons over the 7-second period, with an average of 94.62 kilotons per second. But the entirety of the engagement we see on screen during this cutscene has Sovereign being assaulted from all angles with a consistent level of firepower for a total of 27 seconds, which means over this cutscene, Sovereign takes at the very least 2,554.7 kilotons, or just over 2.5 megatons of ordnance with no time allowed for kinetic barrier recharge. It is assumed the assault on Sovereign took significantly longer than 27 seconds and was likely more on the order of several minutes. Even if the battle only lasted 5 minutes, Sovereign shields would have withstood at least 25.5 megatons of ordnance. The battle actually only came to an end when Shepard destroyed Saren's reanimated cybernetic husk, being controlled directly by Sovereign. This action caused a backfeed of corrupted data, causing Sovereign shields to fail, ultimately granting the opportunity for the defending fleet to annihilate Sovereign. However, another great example is when a Turian fleet of cruisers assaulted Reapers above Palaven. In this scene, again based on the blooms of the impacts, these are the main guns of the Turian cruisers striking the Reaper's hull. And in this I counted 40 hits from the larger guns of the Turian cruisers over a 10-second period. Each one of those shots is, as we established at the start of this video, 38 kilotons per shot, which means that the 40 shots I counted equate to 1,520 kilotons of energy. But the cutscene that we're given here takes place over an engagement period of 23 seconds, from the moment of the first round impacting the Reaper to the moment it effectively cuts away, which means over the entirety of the 23-second active engagement, that Reaper took 3,496 kilotons, and still the shields did not fail. The awkward reality that I'm now being confronted with is that I can't find an instance where we actually see a Reaper's shields get broken by the ordnance that they're taking on board, or at least not in a way that we can actually extrapolate how much firepower it took to crack a Reaper's kinetic barriers. There of course is the example in the final battle in Mass Effect 3 when the combined fleets arrive on Earth's doorstep, that one Reaper gets shot by 2 main gun shots and evidently its kinetic barriers aren't up because it blasts 2 of its legs clean off, which shows at least that the hull armour of a Reaper can be damaged by our conventional weapons. But we have no frame of reference of how much firepower that Reaper took in order for its shields to fail. The highest calculation we have available that is based on things we directly observed and known aspects of the Mass Effect universe is the final calculation I gave for the 40 hits from larger guns by the Turian cruisers over Palaven, meaning that a Reaper's shields can withstand at least 3,496 kilotons. But that doesn't take into account the fact that the engagement with the Alliance fleet of Sovereign in the Citadel in Mass Effect 1 would have inevitably taken place over several minutes, and the Alliance fleet was giving it all that they had. So I really don't think it's that much of a leap of logic to assume that Reaper Kinetic Barriers can take a great deal more punishment, on the order of 25 megatons and more, based on the fact that this engagement between Sovereign and the Alliance happened likely over several minutes, with it being constantly bombarded from all angles by at the very least the broadside mass accelerator weapons on the cruisers. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We know from calculations that they can take at least 3,496 kilotons, but do you think we know enough, and our assumptions are exact enough, to extrapolate that a Reaper's shields can take in excess of 25.5 megatons? Leave your comments down below, and until next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Be sure to like the video if you did, and pop a comment below on what you'd like me to cover next. I just want to take a moment to thank my patrons, Spartan10148, the Metarch of my facility, Falcon, Sylphia, Mikhail, Ashley, Jordan and Esoteric Sight, my dutiful monitors, Darian, Legions Lost, Labrat, Spartan0137, Jacob Kemp, Sean, Element Zero, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger, Evermore, Personal Devil, Aldeas, Toxic, Scion Esports, Gem Saber and Relentless, my diligent sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who continue to support the channel. If you want your name on the end of the video and some perks earned along the way, head over to Patreon and consider supporting the channel yourself. Big shout out to my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, Jacob Kemp, Talia, Fenrir, Bornsteller, Jimbo and Balaz. and all the other YouTube members keeping my installation running on that glorious vacuum energy, with a special mention to the accursed hunter. Shout out to John due to the mathematical formula used to determine the area within a pentadodecahedron. Oh, and Lena because that sandwich. And remember, there are tons of ways to support the channel and keep my installation pumping out content at a breakneck speed. Much love to you all, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.